In the year 1763, the cannons finally fell silent across much of the world. For 7 brutal years, the great empires of Europe had fought a global struggle that stretched from the forests of North America to the sugar islands of the Caribbean, from the plains of India to the open oceans of the Atlantic. When the dust settled, one empire stood unmistakably above the rest. Britain had won. France lay humbled, Spain had been checked, and the British Empire now commanded vast new territories that transformed it into the most powerful imperial force on Earth. In North America alone, Britain acquired nearly 3 million square miles of land, an expanse comparable to the entirety of Europe itself. From the frozen reaches of Canada to the Mississippi River, the map had been redrawn in red ink. For the first time, Britain ruled an empire so vast that night never fully touched it. The phrase, "the empire on which the sun never sets," was no longer poetry, it was reality. Yet beneath the glow of victory, something darker was already taking shape, because this triumph came at an extraordinary price. The 7 Years' War had pushed Britain to the edge of financial collapse. The national debt had doubled. Interest payments alone consumed more than half of the government's annual budget, and the newly conquered lands, so impressive on a map, would require armies, forts, and constant vigilance. Britain had defeated its rivals, but now it faced a new question: who would pay for the empire? The dangers Britain faced were not imaginary. France had lost its North American empire, but it had not lost its ambition. Spain still loomed in the south and west, watching carefully for any opportunity to reclaim what had been taken. Closer to home, the situation was even more volatile. Across the Appalachian Mountains, Native American nations who had once allied with the French now faced British rule. In 1763, a powerful Odawa leader named Pontiac united tribes across the Great Lakes in a violent uprising. British forts were attacked, frontier settlements burned, soldiers and civilians were killed. Nearly every British outpost west of the Appalachians came under siege. This was not a distant colonial skirmish, it was a warning. The empire Britain had inherited would not be easily controlled. But the most serious threat to British authority did not come from France, Spain, or Native American resistance. It came from the empire's own colonies. By 1763, Britain had ruled parts of North America for more than 150 years. What began as a handful of fragile settlements had grown into a complex colonial society spread across 26 colonies in North America and the Caribbean. Of these, 13 lay along the eastern seaboard, stretching from New Hampshire to Georgia. Their combined population now exceeded 2 million people, and they were far from united. Each colony had developed its own identity, shaped by geography, religion, economics, and history. New England towns revolved around churches, shipyards, and trade. The middle colonies blended agriculture with commerce and cultural diversity. The southern colonies were dominated by plantation economies tied to enslaved labor. Some colonies were founded by religious dissenters seeking freedom from persecution: Puritans in Massachusetts, Catholics in Maryland, Quakers in Pennsylvania. Others were built by speculators, adventurers, and imperial opportunists chasing land and profit. Many arrived with no choice at all: indentured servants, transported convicts, and enslaved Africans. Slavery was legal in all 13 colonies. In the northern colonies, enslaved Africans made up a small minority, around 5% of the population. In the South, slavery was the foundation of the economy. In Virginia, enslaved people comprised roughly 40% of the population. In South Carolina, the number approached 60%. This was a society defined by inequality and contradiction. For generations, most colonists thought of themselves as loyal Britons. They spoke the language, followed British law, and celebrated the crown. But by the mid-18th century, something was changing. Immigration patterns shifted. Increasing numbers arrived from Ireland, Scotland, and the German states, bringing new customs, accents, and ideas. A distinct colonial culture began to emerge, one that impressed and unsettled British visitors. Americans were less deferential, more assertive, and more willing to question authority. And while the colonies remained legally British, the emotional bond with the mother country had begun to loosen. For decades, Britain had largely left the colonies to manage their own affairs. This unwritten policy later became known as salutary neglect. Colonial assemblies governed local matters, taxes were low, imperial laws existed, but enforcement was often weak or inconsistent. Britain focused its attention elsewhere, on sugar-rich Caribbean islands and the vast trade networks of India. Under this loose arrangement, the colonies prospered, merchants grew wealthy, farmers expanded westward, local political institutions matured. After 1763, this hands-off approach came to an abrupt end. Britain was drowning in debt, and many in Parliament believed the colonies, prosperous, protected, and lightly taxed, should now shoulder part of the burden. From London's perspective, the logic seemed sound. From America's perspective, it would change everything. In 1764, Britain's Prime Minister Grenville introduced a new imperial strategy. He was determined to restore Britain's finances and believed colonial taxation was essential. Two measures stood at the center of his plan. The first was the Sugar Act, which lowered the tax on foreign molasses but strengthened enforcement. Smuggling, long tolerated, would no longer be ignored. The second was far more controversial, the Stamp Act of 1765. For the first time, Britain imposed a direct internal tax on the colonies. Legal documents, newspapers, licenses, contracts, even playing cards would require an official stamp. To British lawmakers, this seemed unremarkable. English citizens had paid such taxes for decades. To the colonies, it was explosive. The backlash was immediate and intense. The Stamp Act struck at the heart of colonial society. Merchants, printers, lawyers, and businessmen. These were the most educated, vocal, and politically connected colonists. They responded with fury. Pamphlets flooded the streets, newspapers denounced Parliament, public meetings turned angry. But the objection was not simply financial, it was constitutional. Colonists argued that they had no representatives in Parliament, and therefore Parliament had no right to tax them. This was not rebellion, they insisted, but a defense of their rights as Englishmen. The slogan spread rapidly, "No taxation without representation." Grenville countered with the idea of virtual representation, the claim that members of Parliament represented all British subjects, whether they voted or not. Few in America accepted this argument, and even in Britain it had powerful critics. One of the most influential opponents of the Stamp Act was William Pitt the Elder, a former Prime Minister and national hero. In Parliament, he delivered a blistering attack. He asked who represented the American in the House of Commons. Not the counties, not the boroughs. Many members represented towns they had never even seen. If taxation required consent, then Parliament had crossed a dangerous line. In America, resistance hardened. Colonial assemblies passed resolutions condemning the act. In Virginia, a fiery young lawyer named Patrick Henry introduced radical proposals asserting that only colonial legislatures had the right to tax their people. The debates were fierce. Some applauded Henry, others warned he was going too far. Among those watching closely was a quiet, brilliant 22-year-old named Thomas Jefferson. As 1765 unfolded, resistance moved from words to action.
Stamp collectors were harassed, threatened, and attacked. Some were beaten by mobs, others were forced to resign. Tax documents were destroyed, effigies of royal officials were burned in the streets, liberty trees became symbols of defiance. Meanwhile, delegates from 9 colonies met in New York and drafted petitions to King George III and Parliament, affirming loyalty but firmly rejecting taxation without consent. Merchants organized boycotts of British goods. The economic pressure worked. In 1766, Parliament repealed the Stamp Act and Sugar Act under a new Prime Minister, Lord Rockingham. Celebrations erupted across the colonies, but victory came with a warning. On the same day the taxes were repealed, Parliament passed the Declaratory
Act asserting its absolute authority over the colonies in all cases whatsoever. The storm had passed, but the sky was far from clear. In 1767, Parliament tried again. The Townshend Acts placed duties on imported goods like glass, paper, paint, lead, and tea. Once again, colonial resistance flared. Boycotts resumed. Officials were harassed. Some were tarred and feathered, a punishment both brutal and humiliating. New political identities emerged. Those who resisted British authority called themselves patriots. Those who sought compromise became known as loyalists. Most colonists stood uneasily in between. No city embodied the crisis more than Boston. A center of trade, smuggling, and radical politics, Boston became a magnet for imperial attention. In 1768, British troops were sent to maintain order. Their presence only made matters worse. Tensions simmered until the night of March 5, 1770. An argument escalated. A crowd gathered. Snowballs and stones flew. Soldiers panicked. Shots rang out. 5 civilians lay dead. The event became known as the Boston Massacre. Patriot leaders seized the moment. Engravings and pamphlets spread across the colonies, portraying the killings as deliberate murder. Blood had been spilled, and it would not be forgotten. In the aftermath, cooler heads briefly prevailed. British troops were withdrawn from Boston. The soldiers involved were put on trial and defended by John Adams, a committed patriot who believed deeply in the rule of law. All but 2 were acquitted. In London, a new Prime Minister, Lord North, repealed most of the Townshend duties, except one: the tax on tea remained. For a time, tensions eased, trade resumed, boycotts ended, but resentment lingered, especially in New England, where merchants bristled at British trade restrictions and aggressive enforcement. Smuggling continued, and so did imperial crackdowns. By 1773, Britain faced another crisis, this time corporate. The East India Company, the empire's most powerful commercial enterprise, was on the brink of collapse. To save it, Parliament passed the Tea Act, allowing the company to sell tea directly to the colonies at reduced prices. The tea would be cheaper, but the tax would remain. To patriots, this was a trap. Accepting the tea meant accepting Parliament's right to tax. When company ships arrived in American ports, resistance was swift. In Philadelphia and New York, ships were turned away. In Boston, the governor refused. On a cold December night, colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded the ships and dumped 340 chests of tea into the harbor. The Boston Tea Party had begun. To many patriots, the act was heroic. To Britain, it was an intolerable attack on law, order, and property. Parliament would respond harshly, and in doing so, it would push the empire and its colonies past the point of reconciliation. Thanks for watching this video.
If you enjoyed this deep history of America, don't forget to like, subscribe,